The rain fell in slow, steady sheets over the cemetery, turning the freshly dug earth into dark, heavy mud. Beneath a sea of black umbrellas, dozens of mourners stood in silence around the polished mahogany casket of Charles Whitmore, one of Atlanta's most respected Black American entrepreneurs. To the public, he had been a visionary businessman. To the people gathered here today, he was a man whose wealth was almost as legendary as the family he left behind. But not everyone standing beside his grave was grieving. Near the back of the crowd stood a young woman in a simple black dress that had clearly been worn more than once. Her shoes were old, the heels slightly scuffed from years of use. She held her purse tightly against her chest, trying to ignore the whispers drifting through the crowd. 29-year-old Maya Brooks lowered her eyes as another burst of laughter reached her ears. "Who invited her?" one woman muttered. "I heard she used to clean Mr. Whitmore's office." "No, she worked in the mailroom. Whatever she was, she doesn't belong here." A few people chuckled. Maya pretended she hadn't heard them. She had spent her entire life learning how to survive embarrassment without showing it. Her shoulders remained straight, but inside, every cruel word landed like another stone on her heart. She hadn't come because she wanted attention. She had come because Charles Whitmore had once shown her kindness when almost no one else had, and kindness was something Maya never forgot. At the front of the mourners stood the Whitmore family. Charles's widow, Victoria Whitmore, wore an elegant black designer suit, a pearl necklace resting perfectly around her neck. Her face showed little emotion. Beside her stood their son, Damian Whitmore, 36 years old, tall, sharply dressed, and already carrying himself like the company's next CEO. His younger sister, Vanessa Whitmore, folded her arms impatiently as the minister continued speaking. Neither of them looked at Maya, but they knew exactly who she was. Years ago, after Maya's mother died from cancer, Maya had been forced to leave college and take a low-paying job in the Whitmore Corporation mailroom just to survive. Most executives barely noticed her. Charles Whitmore did. Whenever he passed through the building, he greeted every employee by name, especially Maya. "How's your evening class going?" he'd ask. "You still saving for school? Don't give up on your dream." Small conversations, nothing more. Or so everyone believed. The minister closed his Bible. "Let us pray." Heads bowed. Rain tapped softly against umbrellas. As everyone whispered Amen, Damien stepped toward the casket. "My father built an empire," he said confidently. "We'll continue his legacy exactly as he intended." The crowd applauded politely. Maya quietly wiped away a tear. Charles hadn't just built an empire. He had built hope for people nobody else noticed. As mourners began leaving the cemetery, groups formed around expensive black SUVs. People hugged. Business partners exchanged cards. Family members discussed flights home. No one approached Maya. She started walking toward the parking lot alone. Then she heard someone calling. "Miss Brooks?" She turned. A middle-aged man wearing a dark suit hurried toward her. It was Harold Benson, Charles Whitmore's longtime attorney. He adjusted his glasses before speaking. "Miss Brooks, would you please remain after everyone else leaves?" Maya blinked. "I'm sorry. Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions." Confused, she looked around. "Me?" "Yes." Before Harold could say another word, Damien walked over. "Is there a problem?" Harold remained calm. "No problem at all." Damien looked from the lawyer to Maya. His expression hardened. "What exactly does she need?" "I'm simply following your father's instructions." Damien laughed. "My father barely knew her." Harold didn't respond. Instead, he simply repeated, "Please be present this afternoon for the reading of the will." The conversation ended there, but several relatives had already overheard. Within minutes, the whispers returned. By the time everyone arrived at Whitmore Manor, curiosity had spread through the entire family. The mansion's library had been prepared for the reading of the will. Crystal chandeliers reflected softly against polished wood walls. Family portraits watched silently from above the fireplace. Everyone took their seats. Victoria sat confidently at the front. Damien leaned back with crossed legs. Vanessa scrolled through her phone. Business executives lined one side of the room. Several distant relatives filled the remaining chairs. Maya quietly slipped into the last seat near the door. Almost immediately, someone laughed. "I guess the staff sits with the family now." Another relative smirked. "Maybe she'll inherit the coffee machine." Several people laughed openly. Maya lowered her eyes. She had almost stood up to leave. Then Harold entered, carrying a thick leather folder. The room became silent. He looked around carefully. "Before we begin," he said, "Mr. Charles Whitmore instructed me to remind everyone that today's meeting is not a negotiation." Damien smiled confidently. "Of course." Harold opened the folder. "I will now read the last will and testament of Charles Edward Whitmore." The room fell completely silent. Every eye remained fixed on the attorney. No one noticed Maya quietly clasping her trembling hands beneath the table. And no one, not even Damien, had the slightest idea that Charles Whitmore's final decision was about to change every life in that room forever. Harold Benson adjusted his glasses and looked around the library one last time. The silence was so complete that the ticking of the grandfather clock echoed through the room. He unfolded the first page of Charles Whitmore's will. "To my beloved wife, Victoria Whitmore, thank you for standing beside me through many seasons of life. I leave you our family home, my personal investment portfolio, and the properties listed in Schedule A." Victoria smiled with quiet satisfaction. She had expected nothing less. Harold continued, "To my son, Damien Whitmore, I leave my collection of classic automobiles, my private aircraft, and 40% of my shares in Whitmore Corporation." Damien leaned back with a smug grin. Several relatives nodded in approval. "That's more like it," someone whispered. Harold turned another page. "To my daughter Vanessa Whitmore, I leave my vacation properties, my art collection, and 20% of my shares in Whitmore Corporation." Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. "Nice," she murmured with a smile. The family relaxed. Everything was unfolding exactly as they had imagined. Then Harold reached another page. His expression changed. He paused. The room grew still. "There is," he said slowly, "one final personal statement from Mr. Whitmore." Damien sighed impatiently. "Just read it." Harold cleared his throat. "If you are hearing these words, then I have gone home to be with the Lord." The room became solemn again. "My family believes they know every important person in my life. The truth is, they do not." Several people exchanged puzzled glances. Harold continued, "Success taught me how to recognize talented people. Hardship taught me how to recognize good people. They are rarely the same." Damien frowned. "What is this about?" Harold ignored the interruption. "There is one person in this room who never asked me for money, never sought attention, and never expected anything from me." Maya slowly looked up. Her heart began to pound. "That person is Maya Brooks." The library exploded with whispers. "What? Impossible. Why is he talking about her?" Damien's jaw tightened. Harold continued reading. "Most of you remember Maya as a mailroom employee." He paused. "I remember her differently. 7 years earlier, Charles had been working late one rainy evening. The executive floor was almost empty. As he walked toward the elevator, he noticed a young woman sitting alone in the break room. Books covered the table. College textbooks, accounting, finance, economics. She was studying while eating instant noodles. Charles smiled. "Working late?" She stood immediately. "Yes, sir. You don't have to stand every time you see me." She smiled nervously. "I'm sorry." He noticed the textbooks. "You studying accounting?" "Yes, sir." "You planning to become an accountant?" She hesitated. "I was, before my mom got sick." Charles sat across from her. "What happened?" My mother passed away. She looked down. I had to leave college. You can always go back. She gave a small smile. I hope so. Over the next several years, Charles occasionally saw Maya around the building. She always greeted everyone politely. She helped coworkers without being asked. She often stayed late to finish tasks that weren't even hers. One winter morning, Charles accidentally left an envelope containing confidential documents in the cafeteria. When he realized it was missing, panic spread through the executive offices. The envelope contained information worth millions. Security searched everywhere. 3 hours later, Maya knocked on Charles's office door. "Mr. Whitmore?" "Yes?" "I think this belongs to you." She handed him the unopened envelope. Every document was exactly as he had left it. Charles looked at her. "You never opened it?" She seemed surprised by the question. "It wasn't mine." That simple answer stayed with him for years. Back in the library, Harold continued reading. Integrity is what a person does when no one is watching. Every face turned toward Maya. She wished she could disappear. Harold turned another page. 3 years ago, Whitmore Corporation faced its largest financial crisis. Damien looked confused. "What crisis?" Harold answered without looking up. "Mr. Whitmore instructed me to continue reading. A supplier accidentally transferred nearly $200,000 into the wrong internal account." Several executives nodded. They remembered the incident. No one knew where the money had gone. Harold continued. Except Maya. The room fell silent again. Another flashback unfolded. Maya had been working overtime in the accounting department after helping another employee. She noticed a major accounting error. Nobody else had seen it. Correcting it would have been easy. Ignoring it would have been easier. No one would ever know. Instead, she stayed until almost midnight. She traced every transaction. She informed her supervisor. The company recovered every dollar. Charles later learned the entire story. When he asked why she had stayed so late, Maya simply answered, "Because it was the right thing to do." Harold looked around the room. Mr. Whitmore attached handwritten notes beside every one of these events. Damien rolled his eyes. "This is ridiculous." Harold ignored him. Money can build a business. Character builds a legacy. The atmosphere inside the library had completely changed. The relatives who had laughed at Maya earlier now avoided looking at her. Victoria folded her arms. "What exactly is my husband trying to prove?" Harold calmly replied. "We're about to find out." He turned to the final section. His voice became even steadier. "For years, I quietly observed everyone around me. Some loved my wealth. Some loved my influence. Very few loved people. Every word seemed heavier than the last. I wanted someone to protect this company after I was gone, not merely someone who shared my last name." Damien suddenly sat upright. "What does that mean?" Harold looked directly at him. "It means your father made one final decision." The room held its breath. Harold read the next sentence slowly. "Effective immediately. The controlling interest of Whitmore Corporation will not pass to any member of my family until the conditions outlined in Appendix C have been fulfilled." Gasps echoed across the library. Damien shot to his feet. "What conditions?" Harold closed the folder for a brief moment. "There is one more sealed document." He lifted a large, cream-colored envelope from the table. Across the front, written in Charles Whitmore's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "To be opened only when every person named in this will is present." Harold looked around the room. "Everyone is here." He carefully broke the seal. As he unfolded the pages, his eyes widened ever so slightly. For the first time that afternoon, even the seasoned attorney looked genuinely surprised. He looked up at Maya, then at the Whitmore family, then back at the letter. Finally, he spoke the words that made every person in the room freeze. Mr. Whitmore's final instruction begins with these words: "Before anyone receives control of my company, Maya Brooks must come to the front of the room." A stunned silence filled the mansion. Maya's hands trembled as every eye turned toward her. For a moment, no one moved. Maya stared at Harold Benson, certain she had misheard him. "Me?" she whispered. Harold gave a gentle nod. "Yes, Miss Brooks." Her legs felt weak as she slowly walked to the front of the library. Every pair of eyes followed her. Just an hour earlier, these same people had laughed at her during the funeral. Now the room was so quiet that even her footsteps echoed across the polished wooden floor. Damien shook his head in disbelief. "This has gone far enough." Harold raised a hand. Mr. Whitmore asked that no one interrupt the reading. He unfolded the final pages. This section is written entirely in Mr. Whitmore's own handwriting. He began to read. "If Maya Brooks is standing before you, then she has once again done exactly what I expected. She came without asking for recognition, and she stayed when she could have walked away." Maya fought back tears. "Many of you have spent years believing that leadership belongs to the loudest voice, or the person with the most impressive title. I learned long ago that true leadership belongs to the person who serves others, even when no one is watching." The room remained silent. Charles's words seemed to fill every corner of the library. "I have watched Maya for 7 years. She has never stolen credit, never spread gossip, never betrayed a coworker, and never treated another employee as beneath her." Harold looked up briefly. "I can personally confirm every word," he said quietly. "I witnessed many of those moments myself." Victoria frowned. "You knew about this?" "I knew Mr. Whitmore admired her character," Harold replied. "I did not know everything that was written in this letter." He continued reading. "Several times I offered Maya promotions." A murmur spread through the room. She declined, because accepting them would have required abandoning her younger brother, whom she was raising after their mother's death. Maya lowered her head. Very few people knew that part of her life. Her younger brother, Isaiah, had been only 14 when their mother passed away. While other young adults were enjoying college, Maya had been working 2 jobs, paying rent, helping with homework, and making sure Isaiah never felt alone. She had sacrificed her own dreams without complaining. Charles had noticed. Harold turned another page. "There is something else my family never knew." Damien folded his arms. "What now?" Harold ignored him. 5 years ago, I was rushed to the hospital after collapsing during a board meeting. Several executives nodded. They remembered the frightening day. My condition required an emergency blood donation. Harold paused. The first employee to volunteer was Maya Brooks. Maya's eyes widened. She had never told anyone. She hadn't even expected Charles to remember. Victoria looked stunned. "You donated blood to my husband?" Maya nodded softly. "The hospital needed a match. Mine happened to be compatible." "Why didn't you tell us?" She shrugged. "Because I wasn't doing it for recognition." Silence filled the room again. Harold smiled sadly before reading the next paragraph. "That day confirmed what I already believed. Character cannot be bought. It cannot be inherited. It is revealed through sacrifice." Even Damien looked uncomfortable now. For the first time all afternoon, he couldn't meet Maya's eyes. Harold reached the final section. His voice became firmer. "I know many of you expect me to leave complete control of Whitmore Corporation to my children." Damien sat straighter. "Instead, I leave something much greater than money." The room held its breath. "I leave a challenge." Harold unfolded one final document. "This is Appendix C." He looked around carefully. "It contains Mr. Whitmore's final decision." Damien leaned forward. "Read it." Harold did. "The remaining 40% of my voting shares will be placed in a family trust." The room relaxed slightly. Then Harold continued. "The chairperson of that trust," he looked directly at Maya, "shall be Maya Brooks." Gasps filled the library. Damien shot to his feet. "That's impossible." Victoria stood as well. "My husband made a mailroom employee the chairperson." Harold calmly raised another document. "This decision has already been legally registered." Damien's face turned red. "What exactly does chairperson mean?" Harold answered clearly. "It means no major company decision can be approved without Maya Brooks' signature." The room erupted. Relatives argued. Executives whispered. Vanessa stared in disbelief. This is insane. Harold waited until the noise settled. There's more. Everyone fell quiet. Maya will not own the shares. Damien smirked. I knew it. Harold continued. She will protect them. Damien's smile disappeared. My children may receive full control only if they prove, over the next 3 years, that they can lead with integrity, fairness, and compassion. Victoria crossed her arms. And who decides that? Harold closed the folder. Maya Brooks. No one spoke. The people who had laughed at her during the funeral could barely believe what they were hearing. Charles Whitmore hadn't made Maya rich. He had made her the guardian of everything he had spent his life building. Damien walked toward Maya. His expression was no longer arrogant. It was desperate. You can't seriously think you deserve this. Maya looked him in the eye. I never asked for any of it. You could ruin this company. She shook her head. Your father trusted me to protect it, not destroy it. Harold nodded. Exactly. Over the next several months, Whitmore Corporation changed. Instead of hiding in the background, Maya accepted her new responsibility with humility. She spent weeks meeting employees from every department. She listened more than she spoke. She learned the names of security guards, receptionists, janitors, accountants, engineers, and interns. Just as Charles had done. When she discovered outdated scholarship programs had been canceled years earlier, she brought them back. Employee emergency assistance was expanded. Training opportunities returned. Mentorship programs were introduced for young workers who couldn't afford college. Slowly, morale across the company began to rise. Profits followed. The board members who had doubted her soon admitted something surprising. The company wasn't succeeding because Maya was the loudest person in the room. It was succeeding because she cared about the people inside it. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that kindness and integrity still matter. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this every week. 3 years later, the library at Whitmore Manor was filled once again. Harold Benson smiled as he addressed the Whitmore family. I've completed Mr. Whitmore's final review. He looked first at Victoria. You have devoted your time to the family's charitable foundation. She smiled gratefully. He turned to Vanessa. You've expanded the scholarship program across 3 states. Tears filled her eyes. Finally, he faced Damien. You spent the past 3 years working alongside employees in every department, from the warehouse to customer service. Your father would have been proud. Damien slowly walked toward Maya. I owe you an apology. She smiled warmly. You don't owe me anything. No, he said, shaking his head. I do. He glanced around the room. I judged you because of your position, not your character. His voice cracked. I laughed at someone my father respected more than he respected my title. For the first time, Maya saw genuine humility in his eyes. She extended her hand. He shook it. The room broke into applause. Harold opened the final envelope. According to Charles Whitmore's instructions, the conditions have now been fulfilled. He handed the trust documents to Damien. Control of Whitmore Corporation officially passes to the Whitmore family. Damien accepted them, then immediately turned to Maya. I'd like you to stay. She looked surprised. As what? He smiled. As the company's chief executive officer. The room erupted into applause once more. Maya blinked in disbelief. I don't know what to say. Damien laughed. My father already said it for all of us. He pointed to Charles's framed portrait above the fireplace. Beneath it was a plaque engraved with the final sentence of his letter. Your greatest inheritance is not the wealth you leave behind. It is the character you inspire in others. Maya looked up at the portrait, tears streaming down her face. The man who had seen her worth when no one else did had changed her life one final time, and the people who had laughed at her during the funeral would never again mistake humility for weakness.